Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. Spring football almost here. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. It's recording this on Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. When does spring football start, Bill?
Monday, March 17th, 2025. At a time to be determined, but my guess is around 8:30 in the morning that they will be kicking off practices. And also, I feel like this happens every year. It's like 75 degrees the week before spring practice starts. And then the first day of spring practice, it's going to be like 50 and raining. Yeah. So
that's too bad. It is lovely in Central Ohio right now. All right. So we're going to do two things on this show here on Kings of Columbus. Thanks, first of all, to everybody for joining us. We're nothing without you. We're going to do favorite Buckeye bracket. We have a bracket of 64 players from the Urban Meyer and Ryan Day era, the last 13 years of Ohio State football. We have sent them out to our tech subscribers. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of votes in each region. And we're going to unveil the bracket here, Landis. And we're going to reveal the winners in the first round games. And then over the course of the next couple weeks, as we go through the actual NCAA basketball tournaments, we will advance in the bracket. So, we got some 116 games in this bracket. We got some 710s. There's not a ton of close matchups, I'll tell you that. But I think hopefully people will enjoy the revealing who the 16 seeds are. Yeah. And you can wait till the second half of the show to find out how we figured out how to divide up the players. But we love brackets. You were just saying you love brackets. So the second half of this show is going to be that bracket. And you're fired up.
I am fired up. Did we get a 12-5? You don't have to tell me who it was, but did we get a 12-5?
So let me tell you, I did not say this to the texters when I sent this out. I tried to pick a live 12 in every bracket. I did that on purpose. I tried to find somebody who I wasn't just going through and being like, well, I think this person deserves to be this seed. I was really trying to do that. And we'll have to see if it was successful or not. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you, but it was my intention to do that. So I think we'll have some fun with that. Everybody loves brackets, and it will be something fun to work through over the course of the show. But we're going to start out with this is our spring practice preview. You guys on the podcast daily and generally on the podcast, you guys have been going through position groups, right? You're covering all the bases. You and I are going to pick 5 players each. The 10 overall Buckeyes we're most curious, interested, most important, fascinating guys we want to get our eyeballs on in spring practice, right? So that's going to be our version of previewing spring. So we're going to do first half of the show is now, and the second half of the show is a fun look back at the past.
Yeah, and not, just to be clear, not a draft of best players, because frankly, a lot of the best players aren't going to be doing a whole lot this spring. Yeah. So we could pick Caleb Downs, but then we might see him do practically nothing.
I know he's good
for the next 4 weeks. Yeah, we know.
I know he's good. So I don't need to. Yeah. You can revel in it.
Sure.
You can lather yourself in his football acumen, but now, the only thing is, and I've seen some texters ask about this. And by the way, this wouldn't be a terrible time. I don't pump the texts on shows maybe like I used to, because I feel like people have a handle on it. And if you want to be a tech subscriber, you very well probably are by now. And I don't want to deluge you with this, but spring football is starting. And if you want to vote in the rest of the brackets, you could do it for a month. Yeah. You get a couple weeks free if you try it. 614-662-4509. You can send a text to that number and get a link back to sign up. And if you have trouble, shoot me a message on Twitter or whatever. We'll get you set up. It's $6 a month. So, okay. So, yeah. So, no, but I saw a texter say, what if Ohio State tries to make Caleb Downs this year's Travis Hunter to both help their team and get him the Heisman? But I was so far down the road on Caleb Downs is going to score 6 rushing touchdowns in 2024. And that was nothing. Why did that happen? That was last spring that happened, right? Where Ryan Day was like, Caleb Downs at running back might be it. Why did that happen? And then why was it literally nothing? He didn't even get a carry. He didn't line up once as a wrinkle, as a throw off the
only
Oregon
thing they did was
defense.
from a punt returner. Yeah, when they returned a punt for a touchdown.
Why did they trick us? I didn't like to be tricked. I'm a sucker.
I can't remember why it came up. I'm trying to think, because I don't think
Ryan Day was just hey, by the way.
Yeah, I think it must have been, because it wasn't maybe there was a numbers thing at running back, because Yeah, maybe they were like a little light on numbers beyond Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and that's why it came up. I can't remember entirely, but yeah, but Ryan Day like took us pretty far down that road of like Caleb Downs can play running back. We're like, all right, let's get fired up about it, and then never happened, never a whiff of it.
Never,
I don't know, but he can talk about it again, and I'll get just as excited about it going into 2025 because I'm a simple man with a small brain.
The endorphins started. Yeah. It was like, yeah. So you have two choices here. You can call out Ryan Day for just absolutely lying to us about Caleb Downs a year ago, or you can just ask him to do it again. And maybe you can do both at the same time. Okay, let's do our draft. Can I have the first pick? Can I have the first pick? Because
you can have the first pick. Are you going to take a quarterback, or is that just like understood that quarterbacks are interesting?
I don't think quarterbacks have to be understood. I think you can take it and have it. Can I tell the secret? Can I just tell the secret of podcasting?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't want to give. Do I want to give away the whole deal here?
Yeah.
All this stuff we do, it's just an excuse to talk ball.
Mm-hmm.
So like, we don't have to well, I don't know if it fits to take the 7th pick and pick Lincoln Keenholz. Is that you just want to talk ball? So let's talk quarterback. Everything's an excuse. Everything's an excuse to talk ball. But I'm not taking a quarterback number 1.
I know you're taking number 1. Go ahead and take him.
Do you? Oh, no, I'm not. You don't know. No, I'm all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to anything that I'm doing.
Okay, great. Go ahead. You get first pick. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to take Ethan Onyanwa, the left tackle from Rice.
Oh, nice. Okay. Not where I thought you were going.
I know we saw him during bowl practice, right? This will not be the first time that people have seen him take the field in an Ohio State uniform, correct? Because he was around in December for this stuff, was he not? Or January, right? Was he not? Was he not there? He was there.
He was there. We didn't get to see him practice. We saw him like dressed and stretching, but we got kicked out of those open practices in the postseason pretty quickly.
Okay. But did he look big while he dressed and stretched? Did he stretch in a bigly fashion?
Yeah, he's roughly the size of the home that I'm sitting in currently.
So I'm fascinated. So he was listed at Rice at, what was he listed at? 6'6", 345 pounds. By comparison, I checked and this is the real stuff. I think Ohio State generally is actually pretty good about heights and weights. They're not super big. They don't have a lot of times where a guy gets to the combine and it's like, well, they listed that guy is 2 inches taller his whole career than he actually is. They're pretty good about it, actually. Don't you agree with that? I think they're pretty good.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. So the NFL combine heights and weights, again, Onyanwa was 6'6", 345. Josh Simmons, who checked in at 6'4" and 7/8 and 317 pounds. So that's 28 pounds heavier for Onyanwa and 1 inch and 1/8 taller. Donovan Jackson was 6'3.5" and 315 pounds. And even Paris Johnson a couple years ago was 6'6" at the combine. So same height, but was 313 pounds. So he's Paris Johnson plus 32 pounds. And I want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see it. And then I want to see how he moves because he's going to be Ohio State's left tackle. And there's not a lot of mystery, I think, for the coaches and the people who have watched Rice film on him. 4 years at Rice, 3-year starter, 2,249 career snaps. He's 3-year starter, all these guys played. The guys played a ton. But I want to see what it looks like in scarlet and gray, man. So I want to see it in spring ball.
I want to see it too, and I think you will. Like, he's not going to be on he's played a lot, but like they need to get him on the field and see what it's about and see how he plays with, I'm assuming, Luke Montgomery next to him at left guard. So yeah, I want to see. I very much want to see it too. He was definitely on my list. And he, like, 340 or whatever he is, carries it really well, right? Like that can be on the heavier side for an offensive lineman. But I wouldn't say that he, like, by any measure, looks like he's like out of shape. He's just a big dude. And he moves really well from what I can tell. I watched a little bit of it at Rice, and you have to try to, project that out against more consistent power competition. Obviously, he had to do the same thing with Josh Simmons when they got him from San Diego State. But guy that big that moves his feet as well as Ethan Onyanwa does, like, there's a reason why people, I think, were a little surprised that he didn't just go to the NFL draft rather than transfer to Ohio State. So, I'm pretty fired up to see what that looks like. I think Phillip Daniels has a similar physical profile, not quite as heavy, I guess, but he's pretty, like, there's two guys next to each other. It's like you notice them right away when you walk into the Woody for a practice, and that'll happen on Monday when spring practice starts. So I'm eager to watch both them play, but Onyanwa for sure, because I am who I am, and I love the offensive line.
Now, listen, it's not like we haven't seen it before. DeJuan Jones at the NFL Combine a couple years ago was 374. Yeah. So Onyanwa was still 30 pounds light of DeJuan Jones.
But DeJuan Jones is also like 6'8", isn't he?
Yes,
DeJuan Jones, like,
yes.
Yeah, 2
he
inches
measures
taller.
6'8". Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is the biggest offensive lineman we've ever seen at Ohio State. I don't want to go too far with that, but like, DeJuan, this guy's like, he's like in between Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones. Like there was a 70-pound difference between Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones. Ethan Onyanwa is the middle ground. Yeah. So like, I'm curious about it. And again, Josh Simmons, best pass blocking in the country last year before he got hurt, was number 1 in pass block efficiency among 346 FBS tackles by PFF, right? The football bowl subdivision, all 134 teams, 346 offensive tackles who hit a minimum snap threshold. The number 1 rated tackle in terms of pass blocking was Josh Simmons. Ethan Onyanwa was tied for 29th, which is really, really good out of 346 guys. So big guy who can move. Let's get eyeballs on it. He's my first pick.
I like it.
All right, you're up.
I'm gonna step into the bear trap that I step into every offseason. I'm gonna pick CJ Hicks.
Yeah,
it's real, right? It's real. It's real this time. It's not real this time. Just tell me it's real.
I want it to be real.
Yeah.
Larry Johnson talking about like he wants to make sure he can make him a 3-down edge guy who can stop the run and not just be a pass rusher on the edge, almost like triggered me the opposite way of like, okay, well that actually now it's not real at all. Because it's like, well, what we really want to do here is turn CJ Hicks into JT Tuimoloau. And it's like, what are we doing? Just tell me you're going to put him on, like, play him 14 snaps a game and let him get after the passer and see if he can get 6 or 7 sacks. Right. That I would believe more. The idea of like a complete transformation is like, okay, maybe this is all just fanciful.
I am hopeful that they don't get so bogged down in making him a quote unquote complete defensive lineman.
Yeah.
That it keeps him off the field. And I guess like the guy who I'm putting that hope in would be Matt Patricia, to see what CJ Hicks is currently, not what anyone thinks he might need to be an every down kind of player, and just let him cook on passing downs. And that's all I want. Like you said, like it can be 14 snaps a game. It can be, I know, like Larry Johnson said, like we don't want teams to necessarily like get a beat on him and know what he's doing when he's on the field. Like that's okay. Like it's 3rd down, man. Like you're rushing the passer. I really just like I really think there's something there if they put him there, and it's not like I don't want to come off the wrong way about Larry Johnson. Like I think Larry Johnson is probably like saying the thing he should say, and also like it's not wrong to like want to give CJ Hicks more tools. I just hope it doesn't like get in the way of what I hope is increased playing time, even if it's as a situational package player. But even in the spring, like I just want to see, like we saw like a very little bit of CJ Hicks playing, not even playing defensive line, but like just going through drills with the defensive line, maybe 2 springs ago. But this should be a full 15 practices of him just being with his defensive line group. And James Laurinaitis, who is losing a guy out of his room, seemed pretty excited about that proposition. I think if he maybe caught James in an honest moment, he might tell you that maybe all along CJ should have been there. But it's okay that he's been a linebacker too, because I think there's some things that CJ can tap into, having been a linebacker for 3 years, that makes him, rather than like a play the run, play the pass, maybe he's like he can rush, but he can also drop, and you can do some simulated pressure stuff because he's used to playing in that space. Those are the kind of things that James Laurinaitis was talking about. But I would really just like to see CJ Hicks tear it up off the edge in the spring and get excited about him providing some pass rushing upside that I'm still kind of wondering about for Ohio State.
Yeah. I have a highly recruited guy later that sometimes I think we're all guilty of it. I'm certainly guilty of it, of just never wanting to give up on like top 100 recruits, even as they get to like year 3 and year 4. And it's like, what are we holding on? Like this guy was a 3-star. Would we just like have, and it doesn't, but you know what I mean? Like it's not about him. It is about him. Actually, is it about him? I think it's about our expectations, and then B, the ability of the coaches to find a way to get the best out of this guy. And we have, I think, come so full circle that I'm just ready to like back off and let things happen and not get too stoked about it, because I sort of can feel us collectively getting too stoked about it, because it feels like we've been waiting for this to happen for a couple of years.
And it happens a lot on the Ohio State beat. And I know sometimes it frustrates Ohio State fans that the collective stoke gets too strong. And you wasted an entire offseason talking about a thing that was never going to happen. So I'll have to keep myself in check on that too. But for right now, I'll pick them second.
Yeah. I would call that the Dontre Wilsonization of the Ohio State beat.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, when Dontre Wilson was a freshman in 2013, like we spent a lot of time at Big Ten Media Days with Urban Meyer about like, and then he did a little bit, but like, where does Dontre Wilson fit in the history of Ohio State football? And is he a top 3,000 player? You know what I mean? And it's like, in the whole time, like Ezekiel Elliott was sitting right next to him, but we were like, just Zeke, just tell Zeke to chill for a second. What about Dontre Wilson? He's little and fast. And it was like, guys. So anyway, all right. This one, I don't even know if I have to say anything, because I feel like Berm has this covered, but I want to bring it up because I was there when Berm asked, and this is what I think this is our number one job, especially in the podcast YouTube show world, right? And it is why I asked Larry Johnson the stuff I asked last week about, like, is there a thing with you and Jim Knowles? It's like, to take the discussions that we are having on shows and bring them to the people involved, right? Like, you can't be afraid of your discussion. So Berm at Tim Walton was like, hey, is it fair to think of Devin Sanchez as a defensive Jeremiah Smith, or is that crazy? And isn't that, like, Berm's been saying that for 3 months? Is that not correct?
He definitely has been, yes.
So he took it to Tim Walton, and Tim Walton was like, took in the question and was like, it's not crazy. And it was like, let's go. So I'm sure Berm has covered this, but I'll take Devin Sanchez as a true freshman cornerback. And can he show something in the spring that would make us think he is going to be on the field in the fall?
Yeah, it's a great pick. He was on my list as well. I think it's hard if you look up and down the roster and at the different position groups to find guys that you think could like really disrupt things. And I mean that in a good way, just sort of like show up and kind of blow up what your preconceived notions about like that depth chart, pecking order, whatever might look like. And Devin Sanchez might be number one on that list of guys with that kind of potential. And like Ohio State has 2 very good corners returning. We've also seen a world where Ohio State rotates corners in the past, and that could be on the table here too. But we've heard a little bit about like, and I think Tim Walton kind of touched on it, like incredible athlete. And I think in this kind of pre-spring practice period has shown the coaches what they would want to see from a young guy in terms of like work ethic. And now it's just sort of time to like go back it all up while playing football for 15 practices. And I kind of think he's going to do it. So I think he will be like the talk of spring ball. Like everyone will be talk like that is the name that I think will be kind of on the tip of everyone's tongue throughout the entirety of spring practice.
Did the thing where he showed his weight gain. He's gained 17 pounds since he got to campus from 179 to 196. Everybody loves that kind of thing. If we get a moment, because I would imagine there'll be some times when we get to watch some decent chunk of practice and watch some actual stuff, right? If we see the first team Ohio State offense going against like the second team Ohio State defense, and there's a play where Devin Sanchez is covering Jeremiah Smith one-on-one, and Julian Sand tries to make a throw to Jeremiah Smith and Devin Sanchez is all over him and knocks it away and then jaws at Jeremiah Smith after the play, the roof is going to blow off the Woody, right? Like it is going to be, if you hear an explosion, that was the Devin Sanchez and Jeremiah Smith are going at it at Ohio State practice. And it's the number one receiver in his class and the number one corner in his class. And we might be looking at 2 years of this. And this is our first peek at it. And Jeremiah Smith just had one of the great freshman receiver seasons ever. And Devin Sanchez is in here and not afraid. And oh my God. Do you snap judgments on that day? Oh my God. Let's give me the snappiest you guys ever judged.
Yeah. And that happened. There was a moment, I think it might have been in camp, not in spring ball, where Jeremiah Smith and Davis Nigbanosa were going back and forth at it for a couple of reps, and we talked about it for a half hour. So we'll definitely do that if it's Jeremiah Smith and Devin Sanchez.
Content alert. Yeah. Number 4 pick to you.
Okay, give me Mylan Graham.
Okay, he was on my list too.
Yeah. Not terribly surprising that he ended up not doing a whole lot as a true freshman, despite having a 5-star pedigree, because he got here late in June. This is his first spring practice. I just can't. I said this on the daily this morning, so I'm repeating myself a little bit. His camp, when he got the Ohio State offer, kind of out of nowhere, and he was still I think he was a high school junior at the time, was awesome. He was just so polished then.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's 3 years older and more physically developed. And I think he's going to, I actually don't know. I wonder what the receiver breakdown might look like, because it could be, even though Jeremiah's a sophomore, maybe we don't see a whole lot of Jeremiah Smith in the spring. So then it's but the rest of the room, and maybe we don't see a ton of Carnell Tate either. So then it's just sort of open for everybody else, right? And I think Brandon Innes is probably higher up on the list right now than Mylan Graham is, but I can just envision a spring where Mylan Graham's playing a bunch, and he needs to, because they need to figure out what they have in him. But I think he could go from a guy who I think maybe, I don't know, played a handful of snaps, to a guy who is maybe pushing us to start as a sophomore. I don't think I'd be terribly surprised by that.
Do you at least, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are the top 2 receivers for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Do you expect Mylan Graham to at least be 4th if Brandon Innes is 3rd, that Mylan Graham is 4th and has a role? Or
how that's what I mean when I say start.
In there? Is
when I say start, I don't mean usurp Carnell Tate. I mean be part of a 4-man rotation. Or there's Jeremiah Smith and maybe there's Carnell Tate and then there's a rotation. But I think 4th. Bryson Rogers is pretty good. Bryson Rogers actually turned some heads last spring. He was rather entertaining to watch last spring. So I don't want to write him off entirely. And there's also different body types with Mylan Graham, I think, and Bryson Rogers and Brandon Innes too. So I want to be aware of that. But I would say that I'm very much on alert for Mylan Graham to rise up to be the 3rd or 4th guy.
PFF has Mylan Graham at 15 snaps last year, no targets.
No targets, yeah.
So Brian Hartline talked about this. So last year, 22-man recruiting class, 15 of the 22 were in early last spring. Mylan Graham was not one of them. And Brian Hartline last week when we talked to coaches was saying how he was telling Mylan Graham all year, you're behind, because you missed this stuff and just the weight training and that kind of thing. And he said Mylan Graham, after going through this winter, said to Brian Hartline, "Oh man, I know what you mean now," which just means the freshman season that you got year 1 in the fall of Mylan Graham was not Mylan Graham. Mm-hmm. So now we're you may as well just treat him as a freshman. Right. Sure. So it's his first spring. It's his first winter workouts, all that kind of thing. So he might be ready. He might be ready to do something. And then again, this is not fanciful. This is a guy who has never done anything, perhaps showing that he's going to have a real role on the team in the fall. So this is an excellent pick by you. He was definitely on my list. I'm going to pick an oldie but a goodie for old Dougie here, and I'll take Kenyatta Jackson.
Your guy.
And I have had moments in the spring in the past with Kenyatta Jackson where I was like, that is it. That looks like what they could use. And now, like, I don't know, is he like, I asked Larry Johnson about Kenyatta Jackson and he was like, it's his turn, like, to be the leader. So it's like, is he the leader of the defensive line? Like Larry Johnson kind of talked that way. I mean, they lost the top four
him
guys.
And Caden Curry together, probably. Yeah, they're the seniors.
So, like, it's just an odd. I have not researched this, but I think we all have like shorthands of like the career paths for different guys. The pretty highly rated recruit who really was blocked for 3 years and then stayed and has a chance in year 4 is not a common path at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of the guys who don't really do a ton until year 4 are more like, hey, they were grinders and then they fought for a job at the end. It's like, this is finally go time for a guy who was a pretty big recruit out of Florida. And I don't know that he couldn't have done it before. He was never going to get past Jack and JT. But like, what if they're hiding a stud, man? What if like this guy's just been waiting in practice and he's like, well, what do you want me to do? I was behind like 2 top 50 NFL picks for 3 years. Jack and JT played 1 million snaps. I don't know that we know how good he is.
I don't know either, but I do think I would say we saw a step forward from him last year. He played a decent amount, especially
300 plus snaps. 300 plus
postseason. He was like a 20 snap per game guy in the playoff, 23, 22, 18, 15. In those 4 games, and I thought played pretty well. Maybe like play like his most consistent football over that 4-game stretch. So I think we started to see it, and now he's got to break through with it. I think he's a pretty good run defender. I think he showed us that. Like tackles well for a defensive lineman. You just want to see the pass rush, I think, come out a little more. You like him because you think he's like the bendy kind of super twitched up rush end.
More so than I think they've had in a while.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily agree with that.
No, I think he's maybe more of like a Jack Sawyer type, which is like more of a power and motor than twitch and suddenness. Which is fine. There's multiple ways to be successful. But I'm willing to have my mind changed on that. Like I'll be watching Kenyatta pretty closely, I think, when we see the pass rush 101s in the spring that we typically get to see, and certainly any live scrimmaging situations like that. That's the next step for him. I think he is the leader of the room for sure. He and Caden Curry, I think, are the only defensive linemen on the roster who are 4-year seniors, fourth-year seniors in this program. So they have the voice there, and I think Kenyatta probably, at least the way that Larry put it, seems like maybe he has the number 1 voice in the room.
A real progression in the playing time, as you said, 316 snaps in 2024, 174 the year before, 24 the year before that. So like from nothing to a little bit to a real role. And then Larry Johnson said, and now he's got to play 40 or 50 snaps a game. So like that's the next step for him.
Yeah.
To have that kind of production. PFF pass rush win rate. Jack Sawyer last year, 17.6, best among the guys who played. Kenyatta Jackson and JT Tuimoloau, both 12.1. So like that, it's not like he played a limited role and was like had the best pass rush win rate on the team, but pretty good, pretty good. Yeah. And I'll be curious. And sometimes I think like when you're a guy like that, if you can get into a rhythm against a tackle and you can set guys up a little bit and you can maybe have a chance to get around the edge on guys, I'm curious if he looks. Could he not come out in the spring and have us be like, oh yeah, he's a top 50 NFL draft pick too? Like, let's get to 2026 and we're going to be talking Kenyatta Jackson about like, I think he's going to go in the middle of the 2nd round.
He definitely looks. Like, he looks apart already. Like, that's the thing with him.
Yeah,
you just looking at me like that guy's a monster. So, yeah.
So I'm super curious to see like when he's up first in the drills, what it's going to look like. All right, next pick for you.
Can I combine 2 players into one thought?
Yeah,
and pick Malik Hartford and Jalen McLean.
Sure,
together. And who's going to replace Lathan Ransom and start next to Caleb Downs? And I think you would probably say, based off of last year, that Jalen McLean might have the inside track on that because he showed up as a true freshman and played slightly more than Malik Hartford, and when they needed a spot starter against Nebraska, it was Jalen McLean and not Malik Hartford. But Malik Hartford had like the same freshman year that Jalen McLean had just the year prior. And I think they're both pretty highly thought of by Matt Guerrieri, and both I think bring like the physicality at that position that you have to replace losing Lathan Ransom. And I don't know. I guess it could be a spring where Caleb Downs doesn't play a whole lot. So like Malik Hartford and Jalen McLean kind of function as the starting safety tandem throughout a lot of spring practice, which I think would be great for both of them because I think they're interchangeable in the way. Well, I guess we have to see, but the way the previous system worked is like you can kind of be either or, and I don't know that a whole lot about your life changes. But that's a huge hole in defense, obviously, that Ohio State needs to fill. And I think those are the two guys who are going to be competing for it probably by themselves. I don't know that I'm envisioning anybody else kind of throwing their hat into that competition. So that could be maybe the most heated competitive spring position battle we have is who's going to replace Lathan Ransom between those two guys.
And I think we might be headed toward, again, one of my favorite things is when you realize how good a guy is after he leaves. And it's not that we didn't know Lathan Ransom was great, but it's a chance that we're going to be like, wow, Lathan Ransom was really good. I want to outline why this is important, right? And it's not like everything else in the secondary is 100% locked down, but I think people believe in Jermaine Matthews. Davidson Igbinosun is back. Caleb Downs is an All-American. They got to figure somebody else out in the slot. But I'm curious about 2016, right? With that incredible Ohio State secondary with Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward, and Garyon Conley at corner, and then Malik Hooker at safety. Here are the coverage grades by PFF that year. Malik Hooker's coverage grade was 91.5. Marshawn Lattimore was 89.9. Garyon Conley was 89.2. And Denzel Ward was 74.5. And I felt like one of the things we talked about a decent amount that year, and it's not that he was a bad player, but in that great secondary, Damon Webb as the other safety, his coverage grade that year was 50.8. And I thought at times, did it not feel like sometimes teams were trying to pick on him? We're trying to get matchups. Yeah. And so this is one of those like, hey, Caleb Downs is unbelievable. And wow, Jermaine Matthews is ready for this. And they figured out the slot. And this is up to Guerrieri and Patricia and Walton and like this make sure. But like it can really matter who your other safety spot is because you don't want to have like a weak link that teams are going to be like that. Like Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian are going to be like, well, we don't want Davidson Igbinosun and Caleb Downs and Jermaine Matthews anywhere near our passing game, but let's do that.
I think that will, I think that will be the case. And it's not to say that whoever starts there won't be able to handle it, but I think Steve Sarkisian is a smart offensive coordinator and he will circle that spot and see whether or not they can exploit it early on to see what Ohio State has there replacing Lathan Ransom. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, and it's not that they're not up to the challenge, but it's just the point of you can't have a weak spot in the secondary. Yeah. All right. I'm going to take, this is the pick that I referenced earlier, which is like you're hanging on to a high recruit. And I think I've said this same thing like multiple times and I still want to see it. I'm just curious about Jelani Thurman at tight end and whether Max Clare has just kind of taken that juice. Keenan Bailey was like very enthusiastic about Bennett Christian and the way that he came along last season and that he's become kind of like a leader in that room and he's found a real role as a blocker. And you have Will Kazmarek coming back who had some injury issues last year, but I think improved over the course of the year. And then you add Max Clare, who is the number one returning tight end in the Power Four in terms of receiving yards. And then you have Jelani Thurman, who once upon a time was a dude that like I certainly was super excited about. And it was right after Ohio State was there. I think he was in early that December when they were playing Georgia in the playoff. And it was like, he's a big physical, like athletic tight end. And I was certainly making Darnell Washington comparisons for Georgia. And like, here we are. And he just has not found a real role with this team yet. And in a non-portal world, it would be like, oh, like he's been waiting his turn. Like this is his time. But now Max Clare is here. And I want to see if this spring tells us whether Jelani Thurman is ever going to have a role on this team or whether he might be a candidate to enter the transfer portal after spring. Yeah, sink or swim kind of deal. I think that's right. I think he is firmly the fourth tight end at best. And also Keenan Bailey just went and recruited Nate Roberts. So like he's he's getting squeezed, and that can at times bring out a different level of play from a player in a good way, and certainly can help or lead to guys getting a bit lost. And I don't know which way it's going to go for Jelani. I'm with you that like I've been wanting to see that kind of breakthrough, but it just hasn't happened. And I'm with King. Like I really like Bennett Christian and what he provides as a blocker.
Yep.
And Max Clare is a receiver, and I think Will Kasmerik's a pretty solid kind of like all around tight end. So you have three guys there who I think are reliable and can start for this team. And I think like Jelani needs to show that he's one of those guys too this spring.
Yeah. Last year in the playoff, in 4 playoff games, played 16 snaps.
Yeah.
So like just is not has in 2 years played 24 snaps in 2023, played 165 snaps in 2024. So just has like not been part really of what's been happening. And when you add like the best available guy in the portal at your position to the roster, all of a sudden, like there's an effect to that. And this is one of those, like, it's funny to think about how far we've come. Who was the LSU cornerback that Ohio State didn't have necessarily huge interest in because they wanted, like, they sort of said they want to give their young corners, including Jordan Hancock, a chance to like earn their roles. And they didn't take him. And then I think he went to Bama and had like a goofy year, and it wasn't like Ohio State really missed him. But like this would want to, it's just how much the world has changed. But if 3 years ago, somebody had said like, you know what, like Max Clare was kind of interested here, but we really want to like, give Jelani Thurman a chance to like emerge in year 3. Like, I don't know if that maybe sounds like something somebody would have said. Now it's like, what are you talking about? Max Clare wants to come here. Game over. Like,
Eli Ricks.
Right? So I don't know. I mean, obviously it's changed, but that's where we are now. And this is the thing. I mean, I bring it up all the time. Urban always said like the first 2 years are on the coaches, third year's on the player. It's like, so it is. It's a go spring.
Go time.
It's a go spring for Jelani Thurman, and we don't want to play with guys' lives. But I just think with where he was as a recruit, he was the number 111 national player, the number 4 tight end, and he came here from the state of Georgia in the class of 2023. It's a go spring for you. It just would not be surprising for a guy with that recruiting profile. If you feel like I'm entering my 3rd year at Ohio State and I'm the 4th tight end, you might not stay.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's right. I think it makes sense to like stick around maybe and take a shot, but
sure. Take your shot this spring. Yeah. Go wow people. But it's sort of feel like Claire's the pass catching tight end, Christian's the blocking tight end, Kasmerik is like the veteran kind of in between, and then what's Jelani Thurman? If you go out in the spring and prove that you demand to be on the field, then what you are is a guy who's going to play for Ohio State. But that's why I think spring's important, and I'm curious to watch it. All right, next for you.
I think it's possible that throughout the course of the spring, we say like, hey, Ryan Day, how was practice today? And he might say like, it was good, but we had a heck of a time blocking Edric Houston. So I'm going to pick Edric Houston with the 8th pick. I think this is a potential like blossoming into a kind of star defensive tackle moment for him. Larry Johnson said Edric Houston is around like 285, 290. I don't think he's a guy who's ever going to be like the 300-pound kind of tackle that certainly Tyleik Williams was, or even Ty Hamilton was. But it's the Draymond Jones mold, as we talked about before. And I think a guy that moves the way that Edric Houston does with his length at that size is just going to be a real problem for interior offensive linemen. And Ohio State needs them to be, because of what they're losing up front. It's not merely that I think he's about to break out into something. It's at Ohio State. Like it's almost a necessity for them this year that he does that. But I think he's ready. And it seems like everyone is like kind of on the same page, pointing in the right direction of he is a defensive tackle. He's a 3 tech, and Caden McDonald's going to be your 1 tech / nose. Yep. And those two guys together, I think, have a pretty freaking high ceiling. But Edric Houston, especially, is that interior pass rusher, I think could be a guy that, we're talking more about spring. I think come fall, people will be like, oh, what's going on here? But I think in the spring, we're going to start to hear a lot of this guy's really taking a step forward. And this guy is being disruptive, maybe almost to the point where it's annoying as you're trying to get some stuff done on offense.
So definitely a 3 tech, and he's Draymond Jones, right? Like is it too?
But I think, but with a higher ceiling, I think like Draymond
ceiling.
Jones wasn't a 5-star prospect.
Draymond Jones at the combine before he was a third round pick, was 6'3", 281. I don't think we have not gotten the fresh round of spring roster sizes yet. Like that'll happen, I think, probably the first day of spring practice.
We'll get it on Monday. Yeah.
Edric Houston last year was listed at 6'3", 270. I'm sure but I think body type, profile, and end moving inside, like that kind of thing. But I actually think Draymond Jones, if we were doing like again with this favorite Buckeyes the last 13 years, it's just like a nice even thing. 7 years of Urban, 6 years a day. I think like everybody watching and listening to this can relate to that. There might even, for some people, it's like if we're going back into the Tressel era, it's like, oh, that's a little old for me. I think everybody can relate to the last 13 years. I think if we did most underrated Buckeyes the last 10 years, maybe we should do that as an off-season show. Most underrated Buckeyes in the Day and Meyer era. I think I might put Draymond Jones on that list because I felt like Draymond Jones, like in 2018, after Nick Bosa got hurt, like Draymond Jones held that defensive line together and was like a singular force. And if he would have had Nick Bosa still around and maybe teams weren't as focused on him, like I think he could have been even more dynamic. But like, so if you're telling me Edric Houston is Draymond Jones plus, I am super fired up about that.
And I think he is. Like, and Draymond Jones was a really good prospect coming out of high school, coming out of St. Ignatius. I think he was like injured, which impacted his recruiting ranking, if I remember correctly. But he was like just outside the top 100 nationally in the composite. But Edric Houston was 26th in the composite. Yeah. Right. Like and like, rankings aren't everything. I understand that. But I think there's just a little bit more of a ceiling there. Or a higher ceiling for Edric Houston to reach.
Okay, so I only had 7 guys on my list, so thankfully I'm gonna be able to finish my project here. I had CJ Hicks, I had Mylan Graham that you picked. So my last pick here is going to be Ian Moore. And
I want to pick Ian Moore.
This is whether Ian Moore, as a second-year player, is ready to be the third tackle behind Ethan Onyanwa and Philip Daniels in a situation where Zen Michalski and George Fitzpatrick both transferred this offseason. George Fitzpatrick, where he's probably going to start at Kansas State, and Zen Michalski, where he might be penciled in to start at Indiana. And so then it's like, what are you going to do? Because if it's not Ian Moore, like who's the third tackle if it's not Ian Moore? It's probably one of these combo guys, right? Now we're talking about, is Tegra Shabola kicking out? Or like, could Luke Montgomery play tackle? Or but there's not like a pure, unless it's Carter Lowe as a true freshman, right? Is Carter Lowe a tackle? Like, is that? Yeah. So like the search for, you're one alien abduction away with these 2 transfers, and Ian Moore is part of your future. But the thing, I'm okay taking him later here, is he very well might be on the Luke Montgomery path, which is, I think, like last spring, Luke Montgomery in year 2 as a highly recruited guy, I don't think was ready. And I don't even know if he was ready in August. Like he didn't win. There were jobs to be won. And Luke Montgomery, I don't know that he came particularly close to winning anything. But guess when he was ready? He was ready in November and December and January. And by the end of the year, he was a monster. And we talked about that. I think for year 2 offensive linemen, it can be very likely. We've seen it a million times, Pat Elflein, Wyatt Davis, other guys. You maybe aren't ready at the beginning of year 2, but you're ready by the end of year 2. So I don't know that spring is actually the time for us to get the read on Ian Moore. But also this is a stand-in for who's the left tackle with the 2s? Who's the right tackle with the 2s? And we're going to be scribbling all that kind of stuff down watching practice.
Yeah, I don't know who, like the second team offensive tackles. Ian Moore will be one of them, but I don't know who the other one is right now.
Yeah. Carter Lowe, maybe.
Or Deontay Armstrong, maybe.
Or Deontay, especially in a world where like some of these other guys who might actually be tackle options are going to be playing on the interior. Saravelt and Shabola and Montgomery and all those guys are just be playing inside.
Right. And competing for starting jobs at those spots too. I don't know. And I guess it does seem like Ohio State sometimes is not super fixated on figuring out who's going to start in the spring, which is actually maybe the right way to use spring. Frankly, we can talk about it a lot, but like, what's the best use of your time is probably just more development kind of stuff. But even then, Ian Moore is interesting to watch. Like I liked him when Ohio State got him. I think like physically he very much looks the part. I thought he looked the part last year. Like, sometimes you look at a freshman, you're like, that's going to take maybe a year or 2 for you to just sort of get physically where you need to be. And I don't think that's Ian Moore. So, and I think like he moves well enough to be a college tackle, definitely. So I think you're right. It's like, who's the third tackle? if you really wanted to take it like a step further, could you say like is Ian Moore, who's like a borderline top 100 guy, perhaps ready to start as a sophomore? And if he is, does that make any pieces move around a little bit on the offensive line? I don't know. It's just like there's a pretty stark contrast between the interior, where you think you have four guys who can play, maybe a fifth, and a tackle. It's like we got two, and I don't know. Right. I don't know what else there is beyond that. So it's a huge spring for Ian Moore for a number of reasons.
Yeah. All right. Last pick to you, number 10.
I wanted to take Ian Moore with my last pick. So since he's gone, I'll take Julian Sayin. So we have a quarterback on the list at number 10. Okay. I don't. It's going to be couched as a competition. I don't think it is. So I hope I can say that. It's like it's not. There's not a lot of intrigue for me there. I'm like, oh, who's going to win the starting quarterback job? It's just like let's see this kid rip it. Like let's see him go out there and back up the things that people have said about him, about his processing ability, how quickly he sees things, the short to intermediate accuracy that he has, the quick release, all that stuff. I'd like to see him move around a little bit too, see what that looks like. Billy Fessler, he was asked about what are the traits you like to see in a quarterback, and one of the things he said is you have to be at least able to solve problems with your feet, which is not to say you have to run, but you have to be able to navigate a muddy pocket, and maybe sometimes you do have to run. And I think we need to see some of that from Julian Sayin in the spring. Obviously, he won't be able to get hit, but you can still get a feel for kind of like how quickly he can do that and reset his feet and get the ball out, that kind of stuff. So we did not get to see like whatever we saw of Julian Sayin. I think as a true freshman, I don't think did a whole lot to tell us of like what he can be, because he wasn't out there a whole lot to begin with. When he was out there, he wasn't out there with starters. I just want to see him out there with like athletes and see what that looks like. So, and I think a lot of people do too. So I'm not going to get caught up a whole lot in the, well, Lincoln Kienholz has a shot and Tavian St. Clair's like kind of stuff. Like Julian Sayin needs to be this team's starting quarterback or there's problems. So it's less about that and more about just like, let's see all these traits on display, because they're supposedly pretty high level.
Also curious for Tavian St. Clair trait display though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Even though like at a place like Ohio State, are you really thinking that a true freshman is going to come in and win the job in camp? Probably not. I mean, this is probably like 2019 Justin Fields when he got to Ohio State in year one of Ryan Day, and I think Ryan Day was like trying to make it seem like couch it in the competition, and it never was. 2023 Kyle McCord and Devin Brown was a real competition that went down like the week before the season. 2021 CJ Stroud with Kyle McCord around, like Quinn Ewers then around, was I think maybe, is that like what?
That's what this, that feels more like this.
Yeah. Saying's not quite the, no doubt about it, slam dunk that Fields was, because like they really had a guy behind Fields. There was no Tavian St. Clair behind Justin Fields. And Correct. Then this is not McCord and Brown. And I even thought like I got swayed. Devin Brown came out gangbusters a year ago last spring and was like, I am here to compete for this job. And I was a little iffy early on Will Howard. And I was like, Devin Brown is like ready to try something here. So I got sucked in by that a little bit. I want to see Tavian St. Clair, but I also want to see Julian Sayin. So I still think Lincoln Kienholz is interesting, like from an athletic standpoint. I don't know that the passing polish is where it needs to be for him to be this team's starting quarterback. And by all accounts, it's there for Julian. So I'd like to see what that looks like. Yeah. I actually don't think it's that interesting. I think it's just like a classic backup quarterback, which is what you really super need. But like, that's just, I don't think that's what the deal is here. So I'm intrigued by Sayin and St. Clair. All right. Our 10, Ethan Onyeonwa at left tackle, CJ Hicks on the edge, Devin Sanchez at corner as a freshman, receiver Mylan Graham, Kenyatta Jackson on the edge, Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain battling for the safety spot opposite Caleb Downs, Jelani Thurman at tight end, Edric Houston at 3-tech, defensive tackle, Ian Moore, Izzy the third offensive tackle, and Julian Sayin at quarterback. Now we'll each make one wild card pick, and I'm going to take the big Australian punter. Is he still going to be a thing? Nick McClarty?
Nick McClarty. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It was a weird punter year last year. They brought in a couple of guys, and then it was just like, it's Joe McGuire still. It's like, okay.
But Nick McClarty was named the starting punter for week one, and then punted twice the whole year. Joey McGuire punted 47 times. Nick McClarty, who is 6'6" and from Australia, had one punt against Western Michigan and one punt against Marshall. And that was it.
They also brought in Anthony Veneri last offseason, who was the starting punter at Buffalo, and then he didn't do anything. Yeah.
So it's like, what is this? I don't know. Like, is the big Australian guy going to be a punter here or not? So McGuire's still here, right? So the incumbent punter is still around.
Here. Yeah.
But like, is Nick McClarty going to be a thing? I don't know. So
he's pretty fun to watch, man, because he will boom one 70 yards and then he'll kick another one off the side of his foot that just goes 70 yards in the wrong direction.
Right.
Which is part of the issue.
He only punted twice last year.
Yeah.
Because Ryan Day will take 41 yards every time. He can't take 70 yards one way and 70 yards sideways. Like, he's not going to mess with that.
Yeah, I actually would. I wonder, like, the biggest area where I think Nick McClarty is a weapon, at least right now, would be like really flipping the field if you're for some reason punting from like your own 20. I don't know that Ohio State does that a whole lot. No. Like, I want to go back and look at where on average is Ohio State punting from, because I feel like it's usually like from around the midfield area, trying to pin the other team down inside the 5, which are actually they've been pretty good at, I think, over the last few years. There's not a whole lot of let's punt it from our 20 and try to flip the field. And at times, like last year, the times where they did do that, it was pretty apparent that Joe McGuire didn't have the leg to do it. He actually did it pretty well in the postseason, but in the regular season, like I thought that was like a kind of an issue for Ohio State, actually. So yeah, I don't know. Like McClarty is like a big deal as far as punter recruits go. So it's not like he didn't have to do it as a freshman, but maybe he should be consistent enough now to be pushing for that starting job. I don't know. That wasn't actually on my radar for a guy who likes punting as much as I do. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because there is a bit of a thing happening there.
Yeah, and punting in the Tressel era, and then Cam Johnston, again, I can still find the headline. It's like, I think I argued when Ohio State won the national championship that Cam Johnston was as good as his job as anybody on that Ohio State roster. Like, we had healthy punting discussions around Ohio State. I feel like we had like discussions around Jesse Mirko for 3 years. By the way, Jesse Mirko went to Vanderbilt last year after being Ohio State's punter for 3 years. Average punts at Ohio State, 42.3, 45.4, and 43.5 in his three seasons. Averaged 48 yards per punt at Vanderbilt. So
yeah, my old editor at The Athletic is a Vanderbilt grad, and he used to text me about Jesse Mirko all the time about how good he was playing. Yeah.
What happened? Why do you think he wasn't quite as good at Ohio State? I'm trying to think of what was happening with special teams while he was here. Can't remember. All right, so I picked the punter. Who's your wild card pick?
Yeah, I went probably pretty far off the board for this one, although you did pick a punter. I'm going to go with Josh Mickens on the defensive line. Again, just super curious about pass rushing production and where it's going to come from. And Josh Mickens is a unique player because he's like kind of undersized for a defensive end, but he's also really long-limbed. He hasn't played a ton. Played a little bit last year. He actually, so there's this, again, it's like a super small sample size, but maybe I shouldn't mention it. There's that pass rushing productivity metric that PFF has.
Okay.
It like takes into account like how many pass rush snaps you have, how many pressure sacks, all that stuff. And it just spits out a number for it. Highest among all of Ohio State's defensive linemen last year was Josh Mickens.
In like 12 snaps? And
in like 11 pass rushing snaps.
Okay.
I think it was. But still, and he had a sack against Purdue, I think. He was the 119 overall player in the 24/7 composite ratings. Like, he's not a 3-star, hope this guy works out kind of guy. Like, he was a dude over recruit. And I think he's a tweener, like linebacker, defensive lineman. We thought maybe he's like the jack of the future for Jim Knowles. And Jim Knowles obviously isn't here anymore. But I think Matt Patricia like has a lean toward guys who can be a bit unique and versatile. And maybe that could be Josh Mickens. Again, like not like he's not going to play 400 snaps of defensive end for Ohio State, but if they're looking for a guy that can give them something in passing situations, maybe it's this guy. I don't know. He's going into his third year and hasn't done a whole lot yet. But I'll be watching him a little bit to see what that looks like.
Okay. Those are our 2 wildcard picks. That's your spring preview. Ton of stuff coming next Monday with the first day of spring practice. And this is the place to get it. on the podcast feed, both on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So you want to do a bracket now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So again, we sent this out to our text subscribers to vote for this. And so they have already conducted the voting. And we're actually like, we could get bogged down. We want this to be fun. We're not going to, plus we have a KOTN to record here in a little bit. We're not going to do like 90 minutes on the bracket breakdown. Even though kind of I want to. You want to, I think, too. Right? I mean, it's kind of where our instincts are. So anyway, here are the 4 regions. Okay? 16 players in each region. And this is favorite Buckeye, not best Buckeye. This is not one of those where I want people like feeling like they have to look up stats to be like, well, I don't know who's the best. Like, you watched them. It's 13 years of players. You guys watched them. Who did you like? And it's just like who you loved. And you don't always just love the best players, right? Mm-hmm. They're just great Buckeyes. So the one region is the Archie Griffin region. That's quarterbacks and running backs. One of the regions is the Jack Tatum region. That's the back 7 of the defense. That's defensive backs and linebackers. The Orlando Pace region is linemen on both sides of the ball, offensive linemen and defensive linemen. And then the Ted Ginn Jr. region is receivers and tight ends. So Landis, I kind of went through, I picked the 16 guys for the most part. I sent it to you to double check. You made some suggestions. Do you feel good about our bracket?
I do feel pretty good about it. Yeah. Yeah. I would have liked a region that was just offensive linemen, but I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. No, I see. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to run through this pretty quickly and let people absorb it a little bit. But like, we got bangers coming in the round of 32.
Great.
There are going to be some great showdowns there. So I think we can have a deeper discussion about like what guys really meant to Ohio State and in trying to decide this or that in some future episodes. We just want to lay this out for people right now. So we're going to start in the Archie Griffin quarterback running back region, where the number 1 seed is Ezekiel Elliott. This again is Buckeyes from 2012 to 2024. Is Ezekiel Elliott appropriately the number 1 seed there in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I guess you could go with a Justin Fields maybe or a Braxton Miller, but I think Zeke feels right.
Okay, so Zeke was the number 1 seed. Braxton Miller is the number 2 seed. Will Howard is the number 3 seed. Does that feel appropriate to you? He just led Ohio State to a national championship.
Yeah, and people like him because this is part of this is just like how much you like a guy too, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Justin
Fields is the 4 seed. CJ Stroud is the 5 seed, which is like I set up that banger in the round of 32 on purpose. Fields versus Stroud is like that's going to be crazy, is it not?
I'm pretty pumped up for that one. Yeah.
Yeah. J.K. Dobbins is the number 6 seed. Trevion Henderson is the 7 seed. The 8-9 matchup. I think I've done this before and done the exact same thing. It's JT Barrett versus Cardale Jones in the 8-9. And I just like doing that to people. And I like getting a read on things. And the further we get away from that, is it the guy who played all the games, who people had, I think, mixed feelings about JT Barrett's career versus the snapshot of the miracle of Cardale. Dwayne Haskins is the 10 seed. The 11 seed is Quinshon Judkins. Does that feel appropriate for Judkins to you? Is that too low, too high?
Well, it feels right. I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tried to put a banger at the 12 seed, so I put Smooth Jazz Kenny Guyton as the 12 seed of like, this is a backup quarterback, but people love this guy. Is that an okay? What do you think of that 12 seed?
It's a good 12 seed for what you were trying to do. It's just that unfortunately the 5 seed was CJ Stroud.
Yeah. The 13 seed is Curtis Samuel, who absolutely has to be in this bracket. Number 14 seed is Carlos Hyde. The number 15 seed is Trey Sermon. Based on basically 1 or 2 big games, but still pretty good. And the number 16 seed, Mayan Williams, people love that guy. And he actually was like really important to Ohio State that one year. So I didn't feel like in this bracket, there were like a ton of guys that I was really leaving out. You know, I think like it was, I think that I got to the 16 pretty quickly. I can look to see who else I considered without like a whole lot of consternation about that. So those are the 16 seeds in that bracket. So someone on the text said missed opportunity with Tate Martell as a 16 seed. I blew it on that. And I wanted to put bangers as a 12 seed, but if I had thought of the 16 seeds more as like crazy wild cards than like the 16th most deserving guy, that probably would have been pretty fun. And I probably should have done that, right?
Yeah. But also then I would have voted and skewed the data. So for the best.
Yeah. It's like, do we want Tate Martell to beat Ezekiel Elliott? I did this one time when I worked on Cleveland.com. I did a bracket of like the greatest Browns player ever. And I swear to God, I helped launch the career of that reflog guy who became like he's like a crazy Browns fan, like has his own podcast now. He like engineered a campaign, and I didn't like set up the voting appropriately enough. And like Johnny Manziel beat Jim Brown in our bracket. And it was like, hey, look at this. And it's like, it was crazy, but it was also like, well, now this kind of what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I didn't love it. It's like, I get it. Ha, 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 ha. But it's like, I did the work for the bracket. Do we want to live in a world where Tate Martell beats Ezekiel Elliott? No. I don't know if I want to live in that world. Do you want to live in that world?
No. Oh, catch me on the right day.
Catch me on the right day. All right. So the first round matchups in this, Ezekiel Elliott over Mayan Williams, 99% to 1%.
Oh,
so
poor Mayan.
Shout out to Mayan Williams for getting that 1%. The 8-9 matchup, JT Barrett, Cardale Jones. Who do you think won?
JT.
What do you think the percent was?
52.
68-32. Pretty convincing for JT. And multiple people in the text has sort of said like recency bias. How does that factor in here? We're just coming off a national championship with some guys. Like that's super interesting. And then I said like, I expect some here. I think I factored it into the seating. Is Will Howard really third in this? 10 years from now, is he third? But he's the quarterback of the national championship team right now. But then Lauren, who's a great texter, made a really good point that she thought actually she ended up leaning towards some older guys because the further away you get from this, guys enter, as she said, legend status. Mm-hmm. And I actually think 2014, that national championship is far enough away now that some of those guys are entering legend status. And actually that can be a thing a little bit. And as much as like in the moment, I think people were like, oh, I wish JT Barrett could throw it better. He has a weenie arm.
Yeah.
So like I have a weenie arm. As you get some distance from JT Barrett, it's like, that guy was a great Buckeye. That guy gave it his all. He started 1 million games. He racked up a ton of stats. He did a ton of winning. And I think maybe there's a greater appreciation for JT Barrett. I think this vote would have been closer 7 years ago.
I think this vote would have been closer like a year ago. Yeah, I don't know. There was like points throughout the season where like Will Howard was getting compared to JT Barrett a little bit. And I wonder if that helped people like look back a little more fondly on JT too. He's absolutely, I think, with time become more appreciated for what he was than sort of like knocked for what he wasn't, which I'm glad because I think he was a great Ohio State quarterback.
Yeah. All right. The 4-13 matchup, Justin Fields prevails easily, 91% to 9%. Curtis Samuel is a super fun Buckeye. He dragged that 2016 team to the playoff basically by himself, but I don't know that he did anything higher than a 13 seed. There's just there's a lot of good guys in this bracket. I don't know what to tell you, right? So apologies to Curtis Samuel. The 5-12, not happening for Kenny Guyton. 92% to 8%, which I think gives us some idea of the strength of CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I mean 8's pretty good. I would have guessed like CJ would have won like 98-2 or something. So
okay. Braxton Miller as the 2 seed, 97-3 over Trey Sermon. Again, this is a percentage. We have hundreds and hundreds of votes here. The 7-10, Travion Henderson, Dwayne Haskins. A couple of people said I did Dwayne Haskins, the late great Dwayne Haskins, dirty here with this seeding. I actually did. I adjusted something because I actually wanted to get Travion and Quinshawn away from each other. I originally had them in a first round matchup, and I thought like, is that like interesting or just weird and stupid? So I kind of wanted to have intergenerational. So I wound up with Dobbins, with Henderson versus Haskins here. Do you agree this is a tough matchup for Haskins?
Yeah. And it's a matchup that he would have won 3 months ago.
Oh, yes. No, I agree with that. Yeah. So what do you think it went? How did it go down now? 7 versus 10. Trey versus Dwayne.
Travion like 60-40?
67-33.
Yeah.
So I certainly think a different matchup, Dwayne Haskins could have won a first round matchup. And unfortunately it did not happen. The 3-14, Will Howard, Carlos Hyde. We had some real Carlos Hyde backers. Somebody said like, if Carlos Hyde wasn't suspended, he would have been the number 1 seed here. And I was like, that's a little hot. Like that's not what held Carlos Hyde back. Like Carlos Hyde's not as good as Ezekiel Elliott. Like he's a fine player, and he had a solid NFL career, but
but not as. I disagree.
That's a little hot for me. So 81-19, Will Howard over Carlos Hyde. Does that sound about right to you?
Oh, I'm surprised it was that close.
Okay. That
Shout out to the Carlos
Hyde got 19. Yeah. El Guapo had a good nickname. And then the 6'11 J.K. Dobbins versus Quinshon Judkins, 87-13 for J.K. Yeah. So I mean, nothing in there that is shocking you. Is that correct?
Nothing shocking. No.
Okay. So that region will face the winner of that region will face in the Final Four the winner of the Jack Tatum linebacker defensive back region. Are you okay with how you said, oh, you would like to have the offensive linemen by themselves, but like the way I divided this up, that like this is a group unto themselves, basically 7 positions on the field, linebackers and defensive backs. Is that okay? It's BIA, a couple good linebackers. It's not quite the Chris Spielman, Andy Katzenmoyer, or AJ Hawk, James Laurinaitis lineage because it's only the last 13 years. But what do you think of this region in general?
Yeah, I think it was the right way to split it up. Too many good players, man. You can't. You're limited by 4 regions. So, I would have paired these 2 together with an understanding that it was going to be pretty heavy towards defensive backs.
Okay, so Caleb Downs is the number 1 seed in this region. What do you think of
that? So like on talent, I think it's right. On sentiment, maybe not.
Yeah, I had Ryan Shazier, linebacker, as the number 2 seed in this region. As the number 3 seed, I have Von Bell. Yes, we love Von Bell. Is that a little high? Is that like a media creation that we love talking to Von Bell? So I made him the 3 seed.
Yeah, maybe he makes plays though. What are you going to do?
He does make plays. I love Von Bell. Number 4 seed is Lathan Ransom, and this felt right to me. Again, just going through it, it's like it was again sort of what we talked about in. Like, man, I think people are really going to appreciate Lathan Ransom. I also think this is a little bit like there's the Lathan Ransom speech that was in the middle of like the postseason recap of the national championship. And I think people were like, that is my guy. What do you think of Lathan Ransom as the 4 seed? Maybe
a little high. But I do think I think people very much jumped on the Lathan kind of train this season, especially in the postseason.
Denzel Ward as the 5 seed, again, like great player, number 4 pick in the draft, but I had a little trouble with this region. And there's some excellent players. I just didn't know how beloved they were. Right? Is Denzel Ward beloved as the 5 seed? Malik Hooker, the great safety, as the 6 seed. Like, is he beloved? I put Raekwon.
He's a sleeper.
Malik Hooker's you think a sleeper. Malik Hooker's a sleeper? Okay.
Yeah.
I had Raekwon Millen as the 7 seed at linebacker. Played as a true freshman on the national championship team. Some really good years after that. Was that too high or is that appropriate?
That feels about right. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Banger matchup 8-9. I was proud of this matchup. Cody Simon, Tyvis Powell. And people were saying this was tough because they're both like longtime Buckeyes, great personalities. I think people really liked them. And also they were incredibly productive. Are they first round picks? No, Tyvis didn't even get drafted. But like, I think this really fits like the favorite, right? I think people really like Cody Simon and Tyvis Powell.
Yeah. Like good Buckeyes who won national titles, but were also just like very solid players. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like, and Tyvis was like the defensive MVP of the national championship game. Like, I think you could start like in roundabout ways, start arguing for like, who's the MVP of these defensive MVP of these national championship teams. I think both those guys are in the conversation maybe. Number 10 seed, Marshawn Lattimore. I made him a 10 seed because he really only played 1 year that mattered at Ohio State because the hamstrings blew up the first 2 years. What do you think of him as a 10 seed?
Sneaky. Ohio guy. People like him. People like his story. I think that like came back from his injuries to be very good. So this is a hard region to seed, but I think we could see some upsets here.
Darren Lee, the 11 seed. Jordan Fuller, I thought was a nice 12 seed because again, I think people like really appreciated him as the eraser at safeties. Did you think that if I'm trying to find like sneaky 12s, is Jordan Fuller a sneaky 12 here? Is that an appropriate seeding?
Yes, and I think he's maybe on that list of underrated guys too. It's weird, like he's underrated, but his underratedness is appreciated. Like if you ask Ohio State fans, like who's an underrated guy, like Jordan Fuller,
right?
He's like, he's rated through his underratedness.
Yeah, Jeff Okudah at 13. Is that too low? Some people thought that was too low. Guys, number 3 pick in the draft.
Yeah, maybe hard.
But like,
right?
do people love? How many people were like on a team that had in 19 that had Justin Fields, J.K. Dobbins, and Chase Young? How many people were like, Jeff Okudah is my favorite player? That's kind of where I was on like putting him lower.
He had a lot of love. I think he had a lot of love.
Okay.
And he also, I think he has the thing too, where unfortunately his NFL career has not gone the way he wanted to, and he gets dinged like in that world because of that. So then I think like Ohio State fans actually embrace that guy more because they want to remind people how good he was in college.
Yeah. Okay. Tommy Eichenberg is the 14th seed. I had to get him in there somewhere. I feel like there might have been a time like in the middle of his career where he might have been like a higher seed than this. And then by the end, I don't know, like I was a little stuck on what to do with Eichenberg here, but I wanted to get him in the 16 for sure.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think he belongs, like, again, not a lot of linebacker presence. But I think that like he was a heart and soul of defense for 2 years.
Yeah. Joshua Perry, the 15 seed leading tackler on the 2014 national championship team and a beloved media personality now. And then Pete Warner, the 16 seed. And as someone pointed out, people thought I underseeded him. And it's because the media never figured out Pete Warner. And I said, I still haven't figured out Pete Warner. I still don't know how good he was.
Don't let me in there. I knew how good Pete Warner was. Yeah.
Okay. That's me. I'd say like another offseason thing. Players Doug never figured out. Pete Warner is top 5 for sure. All right. Let's do the matchups. Number 1 seed Caleb Downs, 97-3 over Pete Warner. So, like, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I like Pete Warner.
I forgot to ask you. I want you to do this here. Who do you think's going to win the Archie Griffin region? Who's your favorite? It does have to be the 1 seed. That's 1 seed Ezekiel Elliott, 2 seed Braxton Miller, 3 seed Will Howard, 4 seed Justin Fields, 5 seed CJ Stroud. Who would you project will win? I don't want this to affect people though, but just I'm curious where you're at.
Zeke.
Okay. Who do you think's going to win this region?
Well,
you can wait till the end if you want. We'll have to go through and you can wait till the end. So Caleb Downs, the 1 seed, easy win. Ryan Shazier, 90-10 over Joshua Perry. 90-10 over Joshua Perry for 2 seed Ryan Shazier.
Yeah.
Von Bell, number 3 seed, 83-17 over Tommy Eichenberg. What does that tell us? That's a little closer than the other ones. Does that tell us anything about Bell? Is he a light 3 seed? Does it tell us anything about Eichenberg? Is he a strong 14 seed?
Both, I think. I think Von is overseeded due to how much we like him. People really like Tommy. It's like a hard-nosed dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe, it's a strong underdog there.
413, Ransom Okudah. What do you think the vote was?
Ransom 80-20.
61-39. I don't think that is an indication of Ransom. I think that's an underseeding of Okudah potentially by me. That's a strong showing from a 13 seed there.
People like Okudah. I see a lot of like Ohio State fan accounts. Like, remember how good Jeff Okudah was? Like, what's my highlight stuff? Yeah, people like him.
But also, like, I did the best that I could. But like the whole point, you want some upsets. Like,
how do you see?
The committee got it wrong.
Guys? Yeah, they had
committee got
$9 billion first round cornerbacks. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah. All right. 5 seed Denzel Ward, 12 seed Jordan Fuller. What do you think it was? Tried to give a live 12.
See, like I would have almost picked Fuller to upset it. So he didn't win. Ward won.
I'm not saying that. Say, what do you think happened?
I think Fuller won narrowly.
73-27 Denzel Ward.
What?
Yeah. And I don't know if that's
Denzel Ward.
He's in Ohio. He plays for the Browns. He's had a very good NFL career. Denzel Ward has.
Browns
I wonder if that matters.
Skewing the data.
Yeah. How about that? Malik Hooker, Darren Lee. What do you think it was? This 6'11".
Malik Hooker won.
74-26 Malik Hooker. So all chalk so far, by the way. Which happens when you're not actually playing games and you're just doing like fake things.
That's right.
7-10 Raekwon McMillan, Marshawn Lattimore. What do you think it was?
Ooh, that's a tough one to pick. Raekwon, like 55-45.
Marshawn Lattimore, 63-37.
Okay.
Hot 10 seed. Hot 10 seed. And all I would say is I think the Ryan Shazier, the 2 seed, might have to look out. I think we could. I think that's an interesting second round matchup now. 2 versus 10. And then the 8-9, I will tell you, I was tracking this early in the voting. Cody Simon, Tyvis Powell. I checked like 3 different times. It was 50-50. Like 3 different times. It was exactly tied. Who do you think won?
I think Tyvis won.
56-44, Cody Simon.
Okay. All right.
Cody Simon.
All right.
Cody Simon. All right. So based on all this, like, who's your pick now? Who do you think? Who do you think's going to win this bracket?
I kind of think Malik Hooker's going to win.
It's kind of wide open.
Yeah.
It's kind of wide open. I'll be like, Caleb Downs is an excellent player, but he went to another school first. He's only played here 1 year. You know, I don't know. I mean, but I also think like you could very easily get to the point of like, well, I don't know if Ohio State would have won the national championship without him. I'm voting for him.
Definitely.
You know? Like that's
I
like
just
a real thing.
That's absolutely a real thing. But I was like, think of like who among these players just like kind of wowed you the most with the stuff that he did.
Yeah.
And I think that answers Malik Hooker.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do the next region as the Orlando Pace offensive line, defensive line region. And Chase Young is the 1 seed here. Is that appropriate?
Yeah. Yes.
2 seed Jack Sawyer. This is where we're getting into favorite. Is Jack Sawyer the second best offensive lineman or defensive lineman of the last 13 years? No. What do you think of him as the 2 seed though?
I think, yeah, when you're factoring in sentiment, he's Captain Jack Scoop and Sawyer. He should be the 2 seed. He might have an argument for 1 seed, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, he could make a run at this thing.
Yeah.
Number 3 seed is Joey Bosa. Number 4 seed is Paris Johnson, the first offensive lineman. What do you think of Paris as the 4 seed?
Yeah, I think he's right to be, I think, the first offensive lineman from this era. And I like him as the 4 seed. People really like Paris. Yeah.
Ohio guy, huge recruit, stuck around after Urban, really important, played out of position for a year, and then was an awesome tackle when he finally got to play tackle and went high in the NFL draft. Number 5 seed, Nick Bosa. So Joey's the 3, Nick's the 5. I'm not sure where people are on Nick Bosa, like just like a weird ending to his career.
Yeah.
But obviously an excellent player, part of a great lineage at Ohio State. I didn't think he should be higher than 5. I thought about a little lower than 5 because I just don't know if there's any lingering stuff of, I mean, he had an abdominal injury. He missed the final, played 3 games in his junior year, but I don't know if there's anybody who like somehow holds that against him.
I'm not sure about that. I think he could have been lower just because you never really got to see like the full, the full thing come to fruition. So, but like incredible talent, no doubt.
Yeah. Number 6 seed Donovan Jackson. Is that right? Based on like the vibes of him coming off this season?
Yeah. Maybe the offensive MVP of a championship team. Yeah.
This is going back a little bit. I made John Simon the 7 seed based on what I tried to remember people thought of John Simon in 2012 and the way he was thought of that on that first Urban team.
Yeah. If you have a guy whose name is John, but people call him Johnny, they love him.
That's appropriate.
Yeah. Johnny Simon should be on there.
8-9 matchup is JT Tuimoloau and DeJuan Jones. I kind of like that offensive defensive matchup there. Do people love DeJuan Jones? I can't tell.
Game. I'd watch those two play basketball.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, people love DeJuan Jones.
Yeah. Okay. Pat Elflein as the 10 seed, Taylor Decker as the 11 seed, and then the live 12 seed, the originator of the Block O jersey, Jonathan Cooper. I thought that was a pretty good live 12 seed. What do you think?
Yep. I think it's good 12. People like the Block O, people like a local kid, people like I think that he's gone
comeback
off to the
story.
NFL and showed that he was maybe a little more than what Ohio State got out of him too. So
yeah. Sam Hubbard just retired as the 13 seed. The 14 seed, Thayer Munford, who we have talked about, like, I don't know what they would have done without the way what Thayer Munford did for this team for multiple years on the offensive line. Number 15 seed, Tyquan Lewis, once the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. And the 16 seed, Tyleek Williams, had to get him in. Did I underseed your guide, Tyleek?
No, probably not. Like from a talent standpoint, perhaps, but I think given the field that he's in, it makes sense.
These are the guys that I had listed when I put all the offensive and defensive linemen down and then tried to seed out of that. These are the guys who did not get seeded, but I thought about. Jonathan Hankins, Jack Muhort, Corey Lindsley, Michael Bennett, Draymond Jones, Davon Hamilton, Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers, and Nicholas Petit-Frere. And I guess you could throw Ty Hamilton in there too. Is there anybody of those that should have been one of the 16 that isn't?
The only thing I was uncertain of, you would know better than I do, because I didn't cover I didn't start covering Ohio State until 2014. So Jack Mehort and Corey Lindsley were gone, but I know people love them some slobs, and those guys were like kind of the first slob group. So I didn't know if one of those two could have been in.
Andrew Norwell, you could throw in that group too, in the mix, but I didn't feel like, oh, they should be in like instead of Tyleek Williams, or they should be in instead of Taylor Decker, so Taylor Decker is kind of the link to that, because he was like the young guy with that group of offensive linemen, and then Decker was still around to start in 14 and 15. All right, let's go through the bracket. Chase Young, 92-8 over Tyleek Williams. No surprise there. 2 seed, Jack Sawyer, 99-1 over Tyquan Lewis. Is that some indication of the strength of Jack potentially?
Yeah, I wonder if he would have been 100-0.
Yeah. Not a lot of
actually.
Can
I wouldn't mind talking to the people who voted. I like Tyquan Lewis, but for the people who voted for Tyquan Lewis over Jack Sawyer,
especially like right now. Joey Bosa, Thayer Munford. What do you think it was?
Joey 70-30,
94-6. I think some strength for Joey Bosa there, who just signed with the Buffalo Bills. Paris Johnson, Sam Hubbard. What do you think this was?
Oh, maybe some push for Sam Hubbard being in the news. I would say Paris won close.
58-42 Paris.
Yeah.
For a 4-13, that is close. And I think, again, like maybe a different matchup for Sam Hubbard. Maybe he gets over the top there. Nick Bosa, Jonathan Cooper, what I thought was a live 12 seed. How do you think it went?
I think Nick Bosa won pretty comfortably.
Okay. 80-20. Nick Bosa over Jonathan Cooper. Number 6 seed, Donovan Jackson, Taylor Decker. How do you think this went?
I would have spent 9 hours looking at this, trying to figure out who to pick. This is rough, man. I think Donovan Jackson won.
70-30 Donovan Jackson. I think like Taylor Decker was a 3-year starter and really important, but the idea of like, did Donovan Jackson save the offense, save the season, playing out of position? Oh my God. Like
Taylor Decker is my favorite player that I've covered at Ohio State.
Yeah. So Taylor Decker is the gorilla.
I have bias here. He is the gorilla.
Yeah. John Simon, Pat Elflein, 7-10. Who do you think won?
Elflein?
John Simon has the 7 seed, 63-37.
Okay.
And then this 8-9 matchup, JT Tuimoloau, DeJuan Jones. How do you think that went?
JT 75%.
Exactly right. 76-24 JT. So like not like chalk in that region. Nothing like super close. Paris Johnson, Sam Hubbard was the closest one. That was still a 16-point edge for Paris Johnson. So who do you think will win that one?
Jack.
Okay. Let's get to the last region. This is the receiver tight end region. This is the position that really there were enough guys to fill it out. I just threw in 2 tight ends, but I could have filled it out on straight receiver and it's a reminder of like how awesome this receiver lineage is at Ohio State.
Not bad.
Who should have been the 1 seed? Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jeremiah Smith?
How much time we have?
I know. It's like now we're back to the discussion that we've been having for 9 months.
I would say Jeremiah.
I made Marv the 1 seed, and I made Jeremiah the 2 seed. And if that's what we get to, watch out. Garrett Wilson the 3, Chris Olave the 4, Jackson Smith and Jigba the 5. Is that order right to you?
Yes.
All guys like in the same era? Okay.
I would maybe. I wonder. I don't know. Maybe you had Garrett 3. Maybe Chris ahead of Garrett.
Okay. I love Garrett, so that's a little bit maybe a personal preference by me. Jackson Smith and Jigba really with the injury only did it 1 year. I thought he was definitely the 5. I could see Garrett Olave going either way. Emeka Buka the 6. Is that okay for a loyal, dedicated Buckeye? It's okay. He's not higher.
No, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Michael Thomas, 7. Briefly, probably there in the NFL, the best receiver in the NFL for a little bit. 8-9 matchup I thought was interesting. Devin Smith, KJ Hill. Devin Smith, the deep threat for 2014. The 10 seed Carnell Tate. Maybe a little recency bias there, but you okay with that?
He's got almost 1,000 receiving yards, which puts him pretty high up on Ohio State's all-time list. Yeah.
Good football player. Terry McLaurin, the 11. And people thought maybe that was a little bit of an underseed. That's an 6'11 matchup with the Mecca and Scary Terry. And a lot of texters said, like, those are two of their favorite dudes. And I think similar guys, like almost like anti-divas, like,
yes,
super talented, but also about as grindy as a receiver can get, which I think people really appreciate.
I probably would have put Terry over Carno seating wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't want an Emeka Carnell matchup in the first round. So like I manipulate, which the committee does. If you need to manipulate some things like one spot in the bracket to avoid certain matchups, I took that liberty there. But I probably agree with that generally. Cade Stover as a live 12 seed, the highest seeded tight end. Is this an appropriate pick? Like kind of trying to think differently. Do people love Cade Stover? Is that a good 12 seed or should I have done better?
No, it's a pretty good 12 seed. Terry McLaurin would have been a heck of a 12 seed. I think you would have been underseeding him, but you would have been creating a scenario for a 12 seed to make a bit of a run too. But no, I think people like them some Farmer Gronk. Yeah.
Yeah. 13 seed Paris Campbell, 14 seed Jalen Marshall, 15 seed Evan Spencer, and then 16 seed the other tight end Jeff Hireman, which you suggested get Jeff Hireman in the bracket.
People like Hireman. Yeah. He's a fun guy.
He's a fun guy.
He's actually more of Ohio State's version of Gronk than Cade Stover is.
Yeah, for real. I feel like you maximize the college experience. All right. First round matchups. Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Jeff Hireman. How do you think that went?
Marv, 98-2.
99-1. Sorry to Jeff Hireman. Number 2 seed Jeremiah Smith against 15 seed Evan Spencer was 96-4. And I'm just like, I'll be curious. I mean, if
that's
we get
just
there,
people pushing back against our Jeremiah is already the best receiver.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fair. But I'll be curious how that plays out in a favorite battle. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Marshall was 94-6. I think that's pretty strong for Garrett Wilson. 4 seed Chris Olave, 93-7 over Paris Campbell. And that sets, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba Cade Stover, this 5-12. How do you think that went?
JSN 70-30.
77-23. Yeah. So like just like decent for a 12 seed, but not super close. The second round in this bracket is going to be wild. 6 versus 11. Emeka Buka, Terry McLaurin. How do you think it went?
Emeka 55-45.
74-26 Emeka, which again I think is like a nod about how much people appreciate Emeka, because just like a lot of feedback on like people really like Terry McLaurin. So a 3-6 Garrett Wilson Emeka Buka, super interesting to me.
Banger, yeah.
Michael Thomas Carnell Tate 7-10. How do you think it went?
Oh, did Carnell Tate win?
He did not. 75-25 for Michael Thomas. Like people like Michael Thomas was excellent. Like again, like underrated probably at Ohio State. Could have gotten him the ball more. And then the 8-9 that I thought it was a pretty even matchup. Devin Smith, KJ Hill. How do you think that went?
I actually have no idea how people feel about those two guys. I would say Devin Smith won 60-40.
I think Devin Smith is one of those sneaky guys that some people love. 75-25 for Devin Smith. So these are the second round matchups we're looking at in this bracket. Marvin Harrison, Devin Smith in a 1-8. Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba in a 4-5. Jeremiah Smith, Michael Thomas in a 2-7. And Garrett Wilson, Emeka Buka in a 3-6. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? That's pretty crazy. 13 years of one school, one position, because none of the tight ends won.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good top 8.
Not
bad. That's what we're staring down. So that's our bracket.
Who do you think is going to come out of that region?
I think that Garrett Wilson has a chance to maybe do something. And I don't know. Just like favorite. Yes. Like I think there are some like little kids who are now old enough to be of voting age now who are like, I loved Garrett Wilson when I was 12 and now I'm 18, Like he really, because I feel like he was sort of like He was so exciting. He was exciting. I felt it. God, I'm 51 and I'm like, I think Garrett Wilson's so exciting. So obviously Marv Jeremiah, I have no idea how that would go, but I am not overlooking Garrett Wilson.
No, I wouldn't either. I think actually it'll either be Marv or Garrett. They're on the same side. They'll play each other.
No, it'd be Jeremiah Garrett in a 2-3 in the Sweet 16.
That'll be fascinating.
And it would be Marv. If chalk holds, it'd be Marv against the Olave JSN winner on the opposite side. So, okay. All right. That's our bracket. Is that fun? Is that fun? Is that good? Is that fun for the people? For the folks?
Yeah. It's fun. Yeah. I'm mad Tyler Record didn't win.
One upset. I was I mean, how can I be disappointed? People always say this, like, by putting in the seeds, you affect the voting. And I would say, so it's like, I don't want to do it random, right? I don't want to do it and be like, oh, here's the 16 seeds. Let's assign them randomly and not have seeds. And the first round matchup is Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Jeremiah Smith. Like if we roll dice, I wouldn't want to do that. You could build the bracket and not put the numbers in, and then maybe like still kind of be true to things, but not label it and see if people can figure it out. But maybe it would open things up a little bit. But also, I believe people don't care what seed I assign. They just vote. I don't think people are like, well, Doug said this guy's the 7 seed and this guy's the 10. I guess I better vote for the 7. People don't respect my opinion. So I don't know that my seeding is affecting things, but it's hard for me to do a bracket without seeds. But every time I do this, and we haven't done one in a while, I get some suggestion of like, leave out the seeds and it would be better. What do you think?
I don't. Maybe. I guess I could see how that would change things a little bit. I don't think it would change things a whole lot.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we'll have some fun. And I think we can dive in a little bit more. When we get down to it a little bit, I think you and I will just have more opinions on, oh man, this is what we think this guy really meant to Ohio State. And we will always be reflecting on voting. We're not trying, I mean, we just give our favorites, but like, we're not trying to affect the voting. We want to see what you guys think. So if you want to be a tech subscriber and vote, it's a 2-week free trial, 614-662-4509. Send a text message to that number. You get back a link to sign up. You do have to put your credit card in, but then like if you cancel, all you have to do to stop, it's easy to stop. You just type stop and you're out.
Yep.
So if you do that before the 2-week free trial is up, you don't ever get charged. So if you just want to vote for a couple weeks and get early spring practice, like you could try that. So anyway, thanks to all our voters. Kings of the North, we're talking about spring football. That includes talking about Ohio State. We would invite you to join us there if it's not something you do on a regular basis. As always, thanks to our producer, Mike Kirstowski, for making us look good and sound good. Spring football starts next Monday, and this is the place to follow it here on the podcast, YouTube feed, and podcast feed. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.